When you was at school, there was a guy who didn't know when to shut up, would crack a joke at the wrong time, teacher would get annoyed and kick you out of class. That was me, using my personality or my skill in making people laugh and smile, but in the right environment would lead to my success. Sometimes you allow titles to dictate what you can do in your life.
We put information on a pedestal all the time because that's what traditional education makes us think is important.
One of the things for us is we don't have time. Well, actually, are we making the time for the things that we want in our life? Forget where you're at now. Where do you want to be? You told me you want to be here. If you do X, Y, Z, it will take you to it. So now what's your excuse?
This horrible, hungry monster machine.
I think at any given time you can be down and not doing well, but it doesn't mean that your whole life has been a failure.
I think that right there was some gold. So we was just talking there before we started recording. I first saw you a couple of months ago speaking at an event, and you absolutely blew me away. Just your energy, your enthusiasm, your passion, your knowledge, your story was so inspiring. And I basically want to just start with a bit of that on this podcast, if possible, because I just love to, the story of hearing about your beginnings and what sort of led you down the path of getting into finances, I just think is super inspiring. So maybe if you could just take us back to some of the key points there about where you started out and what your relationship initially was with finances.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for number one. That was a great event, to be fair. And I love speaking. I love public speaking, and it's something that, I love the engagement. I guess when you do social media, you put videos out, you read comments, but it doesn't feel like it's right there and then, as opposed to when
you're just talking to yourself, aren't you, all the time? This is our life these days with social media.
Whereas when you do it live, you say something, you get a live reaction, whether it's shock, whether it's humor, whether it's sad, like you can see in people's eyes as they feel what you have to say. So I do love the live events. But yeah, my story started off in Tower Hamlets, East London. I lived in a place called Limehouse, which is right next to Canary Wharf. And I guess my kind of initial relationship with money was, I guess, what we call scarcity mindset, like a poverty mindset, where, both of my parents came from Nigeria. I'm the first in my family to be born in the UK. And I guess for them, it was a struggle. It was work really hard, but never really have enough. And, you kind of grow up with the kind of sayings, money doesn't grow on trees, and, all of these types of things that are very limiting, very much about, how we can only live within our means, go to school, get a good grade, go to work, get a job, and then, go uni, get a job, and then you'll be all right. And, if you work for 40 years, save for a pension, and you'll be able to live on a decent pension in retirement. And that's the kind of mindset that my parents had. And I don't blame them, because I always say my parents kind of give from what they've got. And I think sometimes we look at our parents and like, oh, I wish you would have told me this, but actually, if they don't know, how can they give you what they don't know is even available or possible? So I never look back and blame them, but I definitely understand that the life I want to give my kids is going to be different because of the knowledge and the things I've been through and the experiences that I can take to give to them.
What was some of the hardest times growing up with regards to, that scarcity mindset and maybe not having the same money that other people have? Like, what were the biggest challenges?
So the biggest challenges was just understanding no a lot. I think it's painful, like it's almost that constant rejection as a child. Like you see other people doing things and you want to do them and you get no, can't afford to do that. Simple things like McDonald's, like things that people do for fun, like just normal. Like McDonald's was like, you'd have to wait for someone to have a birthday party before you could go to McDonald's. You know what I mean? My parents would say there's McDonald's at home, and my mum would give you like 2 pieces of bread and a burger and say, look, it's McDonald's. Do you know what I mean? It was that type of, and I guess it's what they had. I think, I always tell the story about, the light in the kitchen. I think that was it was a big thing in my house. If you left the light on in the kitchen, you got into a lot of trouble. You could get a lot of trouble leaving the light on in the kitchen. But then I would go to my bedroom, look out the window and see all these buildings in Canary Wharf and all the lights are on and everyone's gone home. And I think for me, that was the first kind of turning point where I was like, oh, there's money. Like at a young age, I connected the light and there being a lot of light to there being a lot of money, because in my house, one light bulb, you're in trouble. So I think sometimes, your environment will hold you back. And, actually, when I looked out that window, I saw myself, and then that's kind of what gave me the vision to go out and work in Canary Wharf and end up working in a bank, because they could leave the lights on.
And do you want to just tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the position that you are now, obviously as a qualified financial advisor, because obviously that's not something you've come from, and you just saw the lights in the buildings and thought, I'll get into the bank, I'll get a job working in the banks. But then obviously you've worked your way up now to be helping millions of people worldwide with the knowledge you've acquired. Would you just tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, so I mean, it started with, like I said, I wanted to get to Canary Wharf. So for me, I got the first time I could get a job, my first ever job, Canary Wharf. I got a job in Marks and Spencer's, 5 a.m. in the morning, in Canary Wharf. And if anyone knows about that walk at 5 a.m. in the morning, the only other people on the street, or only other thing on the street, are foxes. And I used to play a game with the foxes. They'd be on one side of the street, I'd be on the other. And if they crossed the road, I would cross to the other side. And we'd have this little game every morning, just me and the foxes trying to avoid the foxes, trying to get to the DLR to get to work in the morning. And I used that experience from working at Marks and Spencer's to get a job as a cashier. And I always tell people, sometimes you might not, like I knew, although I was at university, I wasn't going to get the grades to get on a grad scheme. But I knew that I was a hard worker. So I got a job. So I got a job as a cashier, and people would say, a cashier is the lowest job in the branch. It's the least important, the least paid person in the branch. But sometimes you allow titles to dictate what you can do in your life. So you say, I'm a cashier, so I can only operate as a cashier. Luckily, I had a branch manager who mentored me, and he made me realize that actually, if I want to be something, I need to act at what I want to be rather than where I'm at. So if I want to be a branch manager, if I want to be successful in the bank, if I want to be in a position of power, I have to operate in a position of power, even though I'm in the weakest position in the branch.
So it's almost like that phrase, isn't it? Act as if. You've already got to act as if you're in the position you want to be in way before it physically happens, right?
Exactly that. And so what happened is I used to take the little pamphlets in the banking hall, and rather than play my phone on the way to work and the way home, I'd read the pamphlets. This is a credit card. This is a bank account. All of these things, the knowledge, I used to take the time. And sometimes one of the things for us is we don't have time. Well, actually, are we making the time for the things that we want in our life? So if I know I want to be more than a cashier, what am I doing to be more than a cashier? Sometimes we say we want things, but when you actually ask yourself, what are you doing to achieve them? You find out that you're not doing anything. So the reality is that you don't actually want it. Yeah. Because if you wanted it, you'd be going to get it. And so we can tell ourselves that we want things, but our actions really let us know whether we really want it or not. And so I put my phone away, and I used to read these pamphlets to work, back from work. Now, remember, I'm a cashier, so I can't sell the product. But the knowledge of the product allows me to have a deeper conversation with clients and with the customers that walked in the branch. And then I was the person, I was the person at school that always used to get kicked out of class. I don't know if you know that kid. When you was at school, there was a guy who didn't know when to shut up, would crack a joke at the wrong time, teacher would get annoyed and kick you out of class. That was me. And actually what I learned was that using my personality or my skill in making people laugh and smile and but in the right environment would lead to my success. So bringing that joker and the fact that I could relate to people, and people liked me and were warm to me, with the skill of understanding the products within the bank, put the two together. Now I used to have customers that would wait just for me, even though there was a queue. They would want to be served by me. Why? Because of the experience, because of how I made them feel, the rapport. And sometimes, like I said, you don't have to, because I was a cashier, I didn't have to move as a cashier. I moved as this is my business, this is what I do. And I'm going to make sure every customer that I meet is going to get the best service possible. And they're going to remember me when we're gone. And so basically what happened, long story short, is that I ended up getting promoted. I was then banking hall manager. I was then basically looking after the banking hall. We call it a coordinator. And so looking after the banking hall, we got mystery shopped. and I got 100%, which is like really and if anyone that doesn't know what mystery shop is, basically when the bank gets someone to pretend to be a customer to kind of test the service. And they do this at all the different banks, but you wouldn't know when the person was going to come in. And so I did that, I got 100%. And then the next month we did it again and I got 100% again. And so because of that, I won an award for my customer service. And basically by the time I finished, also I was part-time, but whenever I wasn't in the branch struggled to hit their target. So this is what I talk about. Although I'm the cashier, I'm the lowest job in the bank, I actually make the most impact because I'm the one that we're speaking to the most people. We have the most opportunity to create income for the bank out of everybody, even though we are the lowest paid and we are the lowest position. And so because put that all together, the bank say, what do you want to be? I finished uni, I'm like, I want to be a financial advisor. And I went from cashier to financial advisor at age 22, youngest financial advisor in Barclays in the country. Now, coming from a council estate, coming from not having a friend or anyone to help me or literally just hard work, it was the fact that I had a mentor and I changed the way I looked at life. Rather than looking at all the obstacles, rather than looking at not having the right grades, rather than looking at not coming from the right background, rather than looking at all the things that could have stopped me, I looked at what I could do and the things that I did have. And because of that, that led to me, becoming a financial advisor at 22.
There's so much that I want to highlight there, because I think one thing that stands out immediately is that shows the power of attitude and mindset. It also shows the power of identity, not identifying with the label you've been given. Exactly. And I think it's such an important thing for people listening to really think about what are the labels you've got going on in your life right now that are disempowering, that make you play at a certain level and ultimately hold you back. Something else you said there about, people say they want it and actually they don't want it bad enough, or they don't want it as much as they think. I actually think that the reality for a lot of people is they do really want it. It's just a self-belief thing or a lack of understanding or knowledge. And I feel like most people just don't think those kind of things happen for them. And therefore, why bother? I might as well spend my time kind of avoiding my life and doing the easy stuff like eating the pizza, watching the Netflix and going out and getting drunk, rather than spending that time like you did, investing in learning and knowledge and so on. So my question is for you, where did your self-belief come from to invest in yourself? Like, was it always there? Was it out of a feeling of like absolute desperation, or was it maybe having that mentor that gave you some of that self-belief?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, where it came from is understanding my why, like what motivated me, and my motivation came from when I was young. Came from my mum. My mum, she used to work as a dinner lady in a school, and she chose that job simply so she could be at home when we finished school. And a lot of my friends didn't have that. Due to the kind of environments that we come from. A lot of our parents, when they finish their first job, they have to go on to their second job. And so what happens is that you're kind of left alone. And so what happens is you hang with your mates outside. And obviously you get up to trouble, and that's if you're lucky. If only you get up to trouble. If not, then you end up getting into gangs and all of these other things that happen in the environment that I come from. And so my mum didn't want that for me. So she chose a job that made sure that she was home. And now, because she was in the kitchen, my mom's quite a big lady, so her weight on her knee ended up having a lot of knee pain, and she used to limp. And I used to watch my mom limp to work, like limp in the morning to go and make money for us, and so that we could have a roof over our head. My dad was working as well, but it's just not enough. So my mum had to continue, his income wasn't enough. So my mum had to continue working, and I could see her in pain every morning, but getting up and going. And I always said to myself, like, Mum, your investment in me will not be wasted. Like, you're going through all this now, but it's never going to be a waste. And so for me, I was like, Emmanuel, as soon as I can I'm going to make my mum's life easier. And so that was my motivation to achieve. Wow. And when I realized that, okay, maybe the education thing wasn't really playing out the way I wanted to, and a lot of that is me, to be honest. I learned later on in life that I wasn't really good at school. It's just I didn't understand my learning style. Once I understood how I input information, I passed all my professional exams without a problem. It was, and that was something that I learned later on in life. But what I did know was, what did I have to do? What skills did I have? And so because of that, that kind of pushed me and drove me to achieve and to make sure that I don't just come back being normal.
Yeah, I love that. I think like again, it's such an important point. It's something we talk about a lot in terms of, you know, why are you chasing certain goals? And if it is just for external validation or significance, likes, you know, Lamborghinis, whatever, it's really not going to be the right outcome that you want when you get there. It's not going to be fulfilling. It's not going to be meaningful. And it's not going to really drive you, I don't think, the same as you're there going, I will pay my mum back. And I think that's so important to get clear on. And also something I'm just picking up on is generally, it's about the relationships and people skills. You know, what you said is so powerful for you is your mum being there, guiding you on a night. Was so impactful, but equally for you, it's about now that was the main skill you utilized to succeed yourself. It was about the being able to make people laugh, being able to chat. And again, we put information on a pedestal all the time because that's what traditional education makes us think is important. People skills is so much more important. So yeah, that's so, you know, important, I think, for us to reflect on. So you started making a bit of money at 22. What was that experience like for somebody who, you know, kind of in your own words, didn't have a lot of money growing up? What was it like when you started making money, and what were maybe some of the lessons through that period in your life that has helped you today?
It was absolutely atrocious. It was absolutely terrible. Even though I was a financial advisor working in the bank, I call it poverty scars. There are so many things that I missed out on whilst growing up. That when I started making money, I remember I bought a pair of LA gears with the flashing lights. Like, it wasn't even cool anymore by the time I bought it. You know, like,
but that was the dream. That was the vision.
When I was 10, 11, and everyone had them, and I did, and I'm buying them when I'm 22. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Do you know what I mean? But it's those types of things that you do because it's like, oh, I need this. I've been wanting this. I was buying. I used to buy. I don't know. Back in the day, it was like Machino, but Machino was written all over you. I was walking out looking like the alphabet, just professional, thinking I was looking cool. It was totally the wrong era. Like I was wearing Machino everywhere, thinking I was doing it, and it was completely the wrong generation.
He was like, I've made it, and everyone was like, mate, you're out of date. You're
so
too late.
You missed the boat, mate. Like, and it was absolutely terrible. Like, and you know, it was a thing that I learned, that I had to understand, that I had to love myself. And that's one of the first things that when I sit down with my clients, I teach them. You've got to love yourself. You've got to understand that no clothes, no shoes, no house, no car can make you any more special. Like, it doesn't, there is no value. Because what happens is that I luckily doing my job, when I worked in the bank, I met some affluent people. And someone will buy a house. I've just bought this £1.2 million house. And you meet them in a year's time. And what do they want to do? They want to buy a new house. Why? Because they met someone else who's got a £2.2 million house. It's never enough. You get a new car. 6 months later, there's a new version. Now you don't like you. If you only live into consumerism, that's how it works. That's the scam that consumerism only works. I remember we live in the UK where we don't really produce anything. You know what I mean? So our system works on people spending. That's why you saw in the lockdown, what did they give us vouchers for? When we're struggling, give us vouchers to go out and eat. Why? Because the way the system works is that we spend money. If we stop spending money, the system collapses. And so what happens is that we are taught and trained from young that your value comes from the things that you can buy, the places you can go, the clothes that you can wear, the car that you can drive, the house that you can live in. And actually, it never stops. Yeah. So you continue just buying stuff and hoarding, and it never gets enough, and you're never content. And so the first lesson I have to, is to love yourself and understand that you are valuable, you are unique, you're one of a kind. Even twins are different. Do you know what I mean? And so when you start to understand anything that's unique is valuable. Anything that's rare is valuable. So if you are one of a kind, you are valuable. And so when you start to understand that, all of a sudden, money takes on a whole new shape and a whole new form.
Right, because you don't need to get external things that make you feel more valuable, because you already know you are internally, right?
Exactly.
I mean, in your experience, how do you get someone who's just totally consumed by that lifestyle? Because we're all consumed by it in terms of, you only have to look at Instagram and so on. It's so vivid, at the forefront of everything. How do you get someone to start to genuinely love themselves and not just fake it and go, okay, I love myself now, I think, but not, do you see what I mean?
No, definitely. I think what's really important is that, people talk about, so if I ask people, you talk to people and they'll tell you about, oh yeah, I really want this new house. I really want this new car. If I earn X amount of money, And it's like, that becomes our focus. But when you actually break them, why? Oh, because of my kids, or because of my partner, or because I'd like to do this for my family, or there are so many, the reasons are actually not what you think it is. I always compare money in this to like being seasoning. It's like, you know, if you got meat, for example, money is the seasoning. Like if the meat is off, it's still gonna mess up your belly. Do you know what I mean? You can put as much seasoning on as you want. Like it's still gonna make you run to the toilet at night. Do you know what I mean? And actually, the focus has to be on, is the meat right? And then the seasoning will make everything much better. It will make it taste better, and it'll make you enjoy it at a different level. But the importance is to understand that, you know, what are you really doing these things for? So when I talk to people, I say, you know, I meet people who, for example, spend a lot, and I speak to them. Why do you feel like you buy that? Because it's only small things. Oh, I buy this on Amazon, and a lot of the time it's a feeling of being appreciated. Because when you buy something, what happens? You pay it, and then somebody knocks on the door and they give it to you. And so you're giving yourself a gift. But it's coming from, and so there's a plus you have the period of time where you're waiting for it, like Christmas. We're all here, the kids are excited, Christmas Day, and then Christmas comes and you open your presents. And so there's a certain endorphin, there's a certain way you feel. But actually a lot of the time, there are, again, like I said, there are poverty scars, there are things. I've had people talk about, actually, you know, when you look at it, the reason for their spending comes from, you know, trauma that they've been through. And actually, rather than speaking to me, they need to be speaking to a counselor. And so we'll get sessions in there, because actually your spending is just an avenue of you coping with the things that you're going through. And actually, therapy is actually needed. A lot of us need therapy, whether we know it or not. And actually spending time understanding ourselves will make a big difference. So for me, it's really important to kind of understand, why are you spending that? Why are you doing this? Nobody really wants to be in debt. So, but yet you continue to keep yourself there. So then you understand there must be a problem. Do you know what I mean? And so actually, then it's about empowering. So what I like to do with my clients is talk about, where do you want to be? Like forget where you're at now. Where do you want to be? And so I then use their words to say, look, you told me you want to be here. If you do X, Y, Z, it will take you to there. So now what's your excuse? Because when you use somebody else's words to tell them what they told you they want for themselves, and you tell them this is how you're going to be able to achieve it, now it's about, how are we going to go back to the old life? We've got to change now.
I love a lot of what you covered there. Might be like a realization and a bit of a light bulb moment for people, because I think a lot of people think of money, which is correctly, you know, to some degree, as it's a tool, and it's, you know, I want to earn X so that I can buy Y. It all seems logical, practical. But I think the reality is, the way that we're hardwired is, it's not about logic. It's all about emotion. Everything is about, like you said, poverty scars, or it's about self-esteem and self-worth and self-love. And actually, when we start to identify, as you say, the why, we can start to then flip it and be more practical, be more logical. And it is about mindset, I think, is the key thing to get right when it comes to money. I'm interested, based on your experience and all the vast, you know, the different sorts of people you've worked with. What are some of the key differences from a mindset standpoint between wealthy people and people who are struggling financially?
I think a big thing is validation. So I think people that a lot of the time when you are struggling, you are buying stuff, you know, I call it the pedigree chum mentality. You know, you're buying yourself a gift, like, you know, you're giving yourself a treat, you know, like you do a dog, you know, pedigree chum. So for me, it's like, why do you spend? Oh, it's just a treat. Oh, I just want to give myself a treat. I mean, how many treats do you need? Like, you're struggling here. Like, when are we gonna? Because actually, you find that buying these things makes you feel better in the moment, but actually makes you worse in the long term.
Yeah, so it's always about short-term fixes.
Short-term fixes. Yeah. And so what we have to try and do is have a more longer-term mentality about what we're doing. I think and that's a big thing for when you think about people who are wealthy, they're not thinking about just today. They're thinking about their future. So what happens is that if people that are wealthy, people that have money, they make money, but they understand that if I make money and I spend it all on myself or the things that I want, I'll always have to continue to work.
Right.
But when you understand that actually money makes money, you know, we've all heard the Donald Trump quote. My dad gave me a small loan of £1 million to get started.
Yeah,
you know, $1 million. He started. His dad gave him just a small $1 million to get started, and today he's a billionaire. What is that? it tells us money makes money. So when you understand to actually build wealth, it requires money to be invested into making more money. And so what happens is, for a lot of us, we have a job and we're comfortable on that income. And so we continue to live the lifestyle that we want based on our job. But what we forget is that one day we're going to stop working. And so what replaces that job and keeps the lifestyle? Well, it's very difficult. If you're talking about, oh, I've put money into my pension, because that's another thing that a lot of people say, oh, I'm putting money into my pension. Well, that's great, to put money into pension, very tax efficient. No financial advisor will ever tell you not to do that. But remember, your pension is not in your control. When I started as a financial advisor, you could get your pension at 50. Today, it's now 56, going to 57, potentially going up to 60. State pension is following the truth. It used to be 60, now it's 66, going to 67, and then 68, and so forth. So actually, putting all this money into a pension where the government are going to decide when you can actually get access to it probably isn't the smartest thing to do as your only backup plan. Like, your only retirement plan can't be a pension. There are other ways to create income in retirement other than a pension. And so what happens is that we work and our focus is on, well, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. And I always tell people, not everyone can be an entrepreneur, but you can make your money making money. Right. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to have a side hustle. You don't need to have, if you can find a way to create an income stream, you don't need to be an entrepreneur every day focusing on business or even like business. You might not even like people, but you can create something that maybe you don't have to directly, like a course. If you learn something and you create a course and you put it on a website and you do the marketing on Facebook and Instagram and social media to drive people to your course, you do not have to speak to anybody. You don't have to do anything. It will all run itself. Yep. You do not need to be an entrepreneur to create multiple streams of income, but you do need other streams of income other than your work in order to make sure that you can retire and live the lifestyle that you want past your work. Otherwise, you just have to keep on working. And unfortunately, I have had too many conversations with people that have got to 65, 67, 55 and been like, oh, I want to retire. You cannot afford to retire. You can't even afford to go part-time. How about that one? You can't even afford to go part-time. Yeah. And it's a devastating conversation to have. And so what I always tell people is that the difference between those that are wealthy, they are focused not on just enjoying now, but wanting to enjoy for the future. So they use their money that they're making today to invest into their future self.
I'm absolutely loving this. And I'm so happy. You just touched upon something there about saying not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. This is exactly what Success School is all about. Because for me, I got tired. I'll be honest. I got tired of coaches and mentors that I paid thousands of pounds to, and it's all this, I'm going to sell you high ticket to teach you how to sell high ticket. And it's this horrible, hungry monster machine. And for me, my ethos now, this membership, I've made it as cheap as physically possible. It's free to join initially. And for me, it's about everyday people. I think there's this gap where we think there's entrepreneurs and successful business people, and then there's people with a job who are struggling, and there's no in between. And I just believe so many everyday normal people that don't want to be entrepreneurial can be doing, for example, 6 figures a year and living a really good life. It doesn't need to be a multimillionaire with 10 businesses. So hearing you just kind of say that, I just think it's so important to reiterate that message. Now, if somebody's hearing that for the first time and think, oh God, all I've got is a bit of a pension and I've got one income stream, but I've no idea what to do next. How do I start? Like, have you got any tips about what the sort of stages are? Where should somebody start now transitioning into what you're talking about there?
I always tell people the first and quickest and easiest way typically to increase your income is at your work. It's the most simplest way to do it. Either at your work or change your job, like doing your job. So for example, I had a client who was on 30K and doing a job employed. They switched to do it. They switched from, they came to one of my seminars. I was like, you've got to find a way to increase your income. Have you thought about contracting? So they literally, all they did was go from having the safety net of being employed to contracting and doing the exact same job. And they went from 30K to 60K. That was in 2020. Today, I saw her earlier this year. She came to an event I was speaking at. She's now on 120K. From 30K and she's still contracting. And the point being, she hasn't learned a new skill. This is the same skill that she was doing, but she just changed it from being having a safety net of employment to doing contract. And when I spoke to her, I was like, even if they only give you your contract for 6 months and it takes you 3 or 4 months to find another contract, what you've made in that 6 months is what you would have made in a year, number one. Number two, because you're doing it contract, just self-employed, the way people don't understand, earning 60K employed and earning 60K self-employed are completely two different things. So if you, to balance it, it's the same as earning 60K employed and earning 60K self-employed. The person self-employed is like they're making 80, 85. Because of the things that you can write off on the tax, you keep so much more money doing it self-employed than you do doing employed, because they've taken all the tax and everything up front. So it's about that's number one. So that's number one. Number two is about, what are your passions? What are the things that you like to do? Because at the end of the day, how do we make money? I always tell people, don't focus on money, focus on value. Yeah. The biggest thing I do in life is add value. All I do every day is look at how can I add value to people? Because if my focus is value, number one, because I'm adding value and I'm helping people, I don't get complaints. The only people that complain that they don't get enough of me. That's the only complaint I get. I can't get enough of you. I can't get your time. You're so busy. That's what I get, because all I do is lead with value. When you lead with value, money will follow. Because if you can add value to someone, they will pay you for the value you can add. So you've got to look at so for example, I did a documentary with BBC. It was a lady and her daughter struggling with income, absolutely struggling. They had to stop mommy and daughter days out for dinner. They used to go out to eat. They had to stop it. They're literally struggling because of the cost of living crisis. And she's a cook. She's a cook in a care home. And I said to her, have you thought about knocking on a few of your neighbors? She lives in a lovely community. Have you thought about knocking on a few of your elderly neighbors' doors and saying, would you like me to cook for you? Like, I can make something big and I can bring it around. Would you like that? And just doing that, I spoke to her 3 months later, and she said, yep, I've done that. I've now been able to buy, for the first time, she was able to buy her and her daughter trainers, and they're back doing mum and daughter dinners. Just because using the same, she hasn't learned anything new. The same thing she does for work, she just found people that she could help in her community. She's cooking at home anyway. And obviously I talk about budget, and you can watch the documentary and see it. But the point being is that sometimes we have transferable skills. The other day I spoke to a woman, literally, I was like, do you know that you have an amazing voice? Have you thought about doing voiceovers? She was like, no one's ever told me this before. I said, look into it. Today she's doing voiceovers, getting 200, 250 pounds an hour to do voiceovers. This is a skill that she already has. She never thought about it. It's just her voice. But I was like, have you thought about doing that? I met someone else. You're so organized. Like when I spoke to her, the way she lives, have you thought about being a virtual PA? Oh, again. And so the point being is that I'm not saying leave your job. Please keep your job. And you know what? We've got to respect our jobs, because our jobs is what's keeping roofs over our head. So I hate when people don't respect their job, because at the end of the day, you couldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't have your job. The point is, don't allow your job to be your only income, because then you're leaving somebody in control of how you're going to feed yourself and your family. So look at, how do I create other streams of income? You can do it from investing. So you can invest, but that's a lot more longer term. You know, so that's not something that's going to help you in the short term, but that can help you over the longer term. There are so many different avenues. You just have to know your why, then create your goals, and then you can find that. That's why I speak to some people and like, I want to buy a property. I'm like, a property is great, but does that match your goals? Because if it doesn't match your goals, there's no point doing it. Some people are literally looking to buy a house just so they can get 1,000 likes on Instagram holding keys. That is not why we invest. That's not how we make money work for us.
Yeah.
That's somebody else's dream. You've got to know what you're doing for yourself. Because guess what? When you know why you're doing what you're doing, you're not going to feel envious and jealous of other people doing other things, because you know that's not your plan. That's not the road you're walking on. Like, the road you're walking on requires you to move in a certain way. When you don't have a goal or a plan and you're just letting life live you, every time you see someone doing something, you feel like you're failing in life. And that's because you don't know what you're doing for yourself.
Yeah, you got to get clarity on that first. I love it.
Yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this now and maybe they've got a couple of different income streams, you know, they're doing okay, but they've never really sort of stepped into invested, and they're hearing what you're saying about, and they'll have heard a lot of people saying, you know, investing your money rather than saving your money is one of the best ways to get, you know, reoccurring wealth and so on. What would be your first steps that you would offer someone as things to look out for, and a way of approaching investing money? And also just touching upon there, what you said about pension not being the best. Have you got advice around, what percent should go to pension, and what are the things to look out for in pensions as well?
Sure. So when it comes to investing, I always tell people there's three main ways when it comes to invest. There's investing in stocks. So whether that be ISAs, pensions, individual shares, actually buying individual shares in companies. That's one way. Then we've got investing in property, and then we've got investing in business. These are the three key, when I say investing, these are the three key areas. Now, the easiest one and the one with the lowest barriers is investing in stocks and so forth, because you can do that. You can do that through a stocks and shares ISA, and you can invest. Some of these let you invest from £1. They even let you round up your change. So you can start very small and very, very easy. Now, what you want to do is look at what are your goals? What are you trying to do? So if someone says to me, I want to buy a property, and they're a first-time buyer, then that says to me you want to look at a help to buy or a lifetime ISA. You want to look at a lifetime ISA, because that allows you to put your 4K and get £1,000 from the government to work towards you want. If someone says, oh, I want to start saving for my children, then you've got a junior ISA. You've got a junior pension as well that you could open up. So again, it all depends on what you're trying to build. If someone says I'm trying to invest for income, then maybe you might say, actually, although I can invest for growth through a stocks and shares ISA and so forth, actually maybe I want to look at getting into property. Yeah. So then you've got different ways. You've got rent to rent, where you, rather than having to put a lump sum, you guarantee the rent. You become a property agent and say, look, I'm a property management company. I'll manage your property. I'll guarantee your rent. And then you rent it out for a higher price. And then you don't have to worry about mortgages, credit scores, and all of that type of stuff. Then then you've got actually buying property, like buying a residential. Then you've got buying a buy-to-let. Now, at these current times, probably the weakest strategy right now is probably buy-to-let, because you've got high interest rates. So the interest rates are high, and then you're only renting it to one individual. So you're kind of capped on how much on the return you can get. So most people will then look to either rent to students or rent it as a house of multiple occupancy, renting to multiple individuals. So property you have your own strategies there. Or right now, what a lot of people are looking to do is buy and flip, because if you've got the money, you can buy something, you can buy it at lower price, because the demand is not there right now. So you can buy it at a lower price, do the work, and then hold it for when you think it's going to go on, and then sell it. Sell it for a profit. So
ultimately what I'm hearing is it's about getting real clarity on your goals and the lifestyle you want to live first. Exactly. And then making sure the investment is in alignment, right?
Exactly. And that's why people come to financial advisors, because a financial advisor's job is not to pick up whether you get an ISA or whatever. These are products. You can go on Hargreaves Lansdown and pick up an ISA or a pension. You can go online and find insurance, and all of these types of things can be done on your own. What a financial advisor that's really any good, his job is really to look at where you are, where you want to be, and fill in the gaps, and create a plan to get you to where you want to be. And that's the biggest thing that a financial advisor does. When it comes to pensions, typically we'd say 12% is the kind of sweet spot for a pension. Now that can be between you and your employer. So for example, your employer might put in 6% and you put in 6%, or your employer might put in 10% and you put 2%. But typically they say 12%. Now, if everyone's income's different, and obviously it's cost of living crisis, so if you can't afford that, there's no problem. But at least you know there's a number to kind of aim and target towards.
And if someone's self-employed, do you still think a pension is a must as part of their investment?
Definitely. Pension is very tax efficient, especially for people self-employed. So for a lot, and again, with pensions, one thing people don't talk about when it comes to the benefits of pension is, one, pensions allow you to buy commercial property. So that's another thing a lot of people don't talk about. But actually, through a pension, you could buy your office. So if you're a business and you have an office space, your pension could own your office space, and your pension could become your landlord, and you could be putting money, paying your rent into your to your pension tax efficiently. And then when you sell that property, because it's owned by the pension, there's no capital gains tax to pay. So any profit that you make there's no tax to pay on it. Can't get that anywhere else. So definitely great there. Also, with a pension is a trust. So you have up to £1 million you can have in a pension, and on death, it's outside of your estate. So it's not included. So the government can't come and take 40% of it. So again, for a lot of people that have money, the way they use a pension is like another £1 million that they can leave. So when we talk about generational wealth and leaving money for the next generation, a pension is a great way to do that.
I think that right there was some gold straight away. That's something, I'd not thought about. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, I want to start to wrap up this podcast because I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for the Q&A afterwards, because I know people will want to get as much out of you. So just before we sort of round things off, there's just a few questions that I've got. They're a little bit more kind of just quick fire questions about you and your life, really, if anything. So the first one is, what is the best advice you've received in your life and why?
Oh my goodness, it's a quick fire and I'm struggling.
Well, you don't have to answer quick, but it's just the questions are simple. The answers might not be.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I learned and I still run with is, your current situation is not a determining factor to how well you're doing in life. I think at any given time you can be down and not doing well, but it doesn't mean that your whole life has been a failure. And sometimes we go through hard times in life and we think, oh, I'm 35 and I've had to move back in with my mom. I failed in life. Not at all. You still got your whole life to live. Your current situation doesn't determine where you're at. And I think that's what got me out of, living on a council estate and living in poverty to living the wonderful life that I get to live now.
Next question. What is the worst advice you've ever received and why?
Oh, what is the worst advice I've ever received? I think actually one of the worst advice I got was again my mom, and she was being really lovely, but she literally, when I told her I was going to start my business and I wasn't going back to work, I started my business. My mom told me to get a job. She's like, when are you going back to work? And every day I spoke to my mom, because my mom calls me every day like a stalker. Every day my mom would tell me, when are you getting a job? When are you getting a job? And today, now that I'm successful, she's like, oh, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy. Can you help your dad become a business person? I'm like, listen, woman, can you leave me alone? Literally, for 4 years, you've asked me, when am I getting a job? And now that I'm on TV, it's like, oh, yes, this self-employment thing's good.
I love it. It's like you said earlier, parents, they have the best of intentions. They come with love, but they only know what they know, right? And that's what we've got to remember with things like that. Brilliant. Next question. Obviously, this podcast is Success School, and the ethos behind it is basically teaching us the things that are important that traditional education never did. So as you reflect now, and this could be about finances, it could be about life, relationships, health, well-being, whatever. If you were to share 3 key lessons that you live by that are so important when it comes to succeeding in life, but you don't feel traditional education taught you them, what would they be?
So much. I think one of the big things for me was because I didn't do great at school, I didn't leave school with great GCSEs, I didn't leave college with great grades, and I didn't leave university with a great grade either. I thought I wasn't good at education. And so when I started my journey, and I started being successful, they're like, write a book. I'm like, I can't write a book. I'm not good at writing. And I even being successful, I still held those things that I had heard because I didn't do well at school. I had that barrier in my life. And then this year, I literally got paid, like a publisher, HarperCollins paid me to write a book. And it's coming out in February. And that means so much to me, because actually when it came through, I realized that actually you can get help. Like, one of the things that I think I've learned over this life is that actually don't focus on what you're not good at. You can hire that in. Like, I don't need to worry about what I'm not good at, because if I make enough, I can pay somebody who is good at that to do that part. I need to focus on what I'm good at. I've got this knowledge. I'm great. I'm good at it, and I can share it. I share it every day. So if I need help writing a book, I can pay someone to help me in regards to the structure and in regards to actually writing it. I can voice note. I voice noted my whole book, and somebody else.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the first one, really, in my interpretation, is kind of like build the right team around you that complement your weaknesses, right? Exactly. Don't try and do it alone.
Don't try and go alone. That was the biggest thing for me. I think the second thing for me really is about, self-belief. I think that's a life, like, you've got to believe in yourself. Like, I I'm lucky enough, like I said, I started my career in Barclays, and recently Barclays came to me to ask me to become one of their brand ambassadors, as in they wanted me to represent their brand. And I looked at myself and I was like, I used to be a cashier. You guys, I left Barclays. Like when I left, no one cried. No one said, oh, don't go. Yet today, you guys look at me and say, you look at me as an equal. You look at me as someone that actually adds value to your whole brand. Someone good. And actually, I needed to believe in myself to know that me leaving them wasn't me giving up on myself. It was actually me believing in myself to go on and do better. And that's one of the biggest things. And then the last thing for me is about vision. Like, I think a lot of us, we have sight. Like, you know, we see things. But for me, the big key thing to changing your life is having a vision. Like I said, loads of people saw those buildings and all they saw was buildings. But for me, I had a vision for myself to be in those buildings. And that vision came to pass. So for me, the big change is when you have a vision. Don't just, like I said, some people will see wood, somebody else will see a table. Like, don't have a vision for yourself and believe in it, and it will change your life.
Emmanuel, I think you're absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing so much already tonight. And I just want to kind of commend you, really, because what I love about part of your ethos is it's not just about helping wealthy people get wealthier. It's about making this knowledge, this information accessible to absolutely everybody. And I just want to say, you know, thank you for being a force for good in the world, as they say, and for just giving so much value, as you said there. If people have maybe just heard of you for the first time and they want to see more of your content, where is the best place that they can find more? And importantly, tell us a little bit about the book so we can all go and get it.
Yeah, so where can people find me on social media? I'm mainly on Instagram. It's the E-Man Effect UK. So the E-Man Effect, EFFECT UK. So that's mainly on Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use it that much. But mainly Instagram is the main platform. And then obviously Emmanuel Asuquo on LinkedIn. So definitely connect on LinkedIn as well. In regards to the book is called Get Your Money Right. And it's a guide. So yes, you can read the book from beginning to end. But really, I wanted to create a book to give people access to the things that I've learned as a financial advisor over the years, the questions that come up, and give you a guide. So if you know, oh, I want to buy a property, there's a chapter there for you. If you're struggling in debt, there's a chapter there for you. You don't have to go and pay thousands and thousands to these gurus online that are gonna, like, there's a chapter for all the way up to philanthropy. If you get so rich that you want to really stunt and you want to start giving away your money, there's a chapter there for you as well. And is really about giving people the power to say, look, actually, I can empower myself. And if I'm struggling and I don't know who to trust, I don't know where to go to get the information, this book is here for you.
Amazing. Is it on audio as well?
It will be on audio as well.
That'll be my favorite then when I'm on my walks in the morning. Emmanuel, absolutely brilliant. Final question before we head into the Q&A. What is your definition of success?
My definition of success is freedom, living life on your own terms.
Ooh, that's just a mic drop moment. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And that is not the end of this episode, because there was, I believe, around another 30 minutes Q&A that was had after this chat. Now, all you have to do if you want to listen to the rest of this episode is make sure you get your Success School membership. And if you haven't already, why have you not? It is completely free to come and join us on a 14-day try before you buy trial. And after that, it's only £19 per month. And there are so many benefits you get once you become a member. You get to join our private WhatsApp accountability and support group. You get over 50 training videos around mindset, high performance, personal development, business, branding, marketing, sales, and so much more. And you also get to be on all our Zoom podcast recordings, where you can not only watch the podcast live, but then you can actually meet our guest, engage with them, and ask your questions to get personalized answers on the call. All you've got to do to sign up right now is click the links below this, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or whether you're watching on YouTube. The link is there in the show notes. Click that link. It'll take you probably 60 seconds to sign up, be a member, and you can literally continue with the rest of this podcast. But you will also get to join us immediately and get all those other benefits that I've just mentioned there as well. Just to be clear, it will ask for your payment details so that you can set up a proper account. But at the time of recording, there is still a 14-day free trial, so no money will be taken right now. You can join us. If you like it after 14 days, at that point, you can become a paying member, but it's less than £5 a month. Like, this is nothing. What I'm trying to do with our Success School membership is bridge the gap between those high ticket coaching where it's thousands and thousands of pounds to work with a coach and thousands of pounds to join courses and be part of these kind of communities. I just believe that it doesn't need to cost that much to still get the quality, still get the support, the network, meet incredible people, and actually be able to learn what you need to do to keep on moving forward in your life so that you can live a happier, healthier, more successful and more fulfilling life. Click that link. I will look forward to seeing you in there. And thank you so much for being here, for listening to this podcast episode. I hope to see you next time. But until then, I will leave with the quote that I always do from famous thought leader, Mr. Jim Rohn. He said that traditional education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. Keep on focusing on that personal development, on that personal growth, on that self-education. I'll see you next time.